Perhaps you're concerned with maybe at some point in time in your Army career, you may have to deploy, whether that's to a combat deployment or a non-combat deployment, and you're trying to think to yourself, what are some key things that maybe I should bring with me? Well, stick around. What's up, my friends? Welcome to an all-new video. I'm U.S. Army veteran ThatChrisChaos, and in this video, I'm gonna be talking about some key essential items that maybe you should bring with you on a deployment. Now, don't think I'm talking about, things that are life-saving and you must have a weapon and you must have, food to eat and all that kind of stuff. Those are obvious things. I'm talking about maybe some things that you might not think of that you should consider bringing with you on that deployment. Now, if you're not familiar, I, myself, while I was in the United States Army, deployed twice, both times to Iraq, first time to the northern part of Iraq, and then the second time was to Baghdad, Iraq. So I have some experience with being on deployments. So I have 5 items on here. I guess it's kind of like the top 5 things to bring with you, but 5 things that I recommend to possibly consider taking with you, whether that's for a peaceful non-combat deployment or maybe it's for some kind of war type of environment and you have to go to combat. And the first thing I would recommend is some kind of like laptop, maybe a tablet, something for a little bit of entertainment. So that way when you do have some off time, you have something to be able to utilize to consume some entertainment. Now the deployment will determine as far as how much off time you might have. If it's a brand new deployment that's some brand new war that the US Army is deploying to, then sure, you might not have any time to be able to consume any type of entertainment and you're gonna be too busy to be able to do really anything but try to get a little bit of sleep when you can. If it's something like a non-combat deployment, then you might have a lot more kind of off time. It also depends on your MOS still, but even like in a combat deployment where maybe it's something that's been a little bit more established, something that's been going on for a little bit longer, then you might still have some off time. But having like this laptop or a tablet or something to be able to, look at some entertainment, maybe you have some home movies on there, maybe you have some movies saved on it, maybe, you have internet access to it, then you can utilize this to enjoy those kind of things. Even sometimes on a combat deployment, you might have internet access. On my first deployment, I didn't have any internet access other than when I would go to what was called the MWR tent, and they had some computers there you could utilize to, check your email and chat with loved ones or whatever, but at your rooms, you didn't have anything. Whereas my second deployment, when I was deployed to Baghdad, we did have Wi-Fi and internet services that we could utilize. It was horrible and really expensive, but we did have something. I think it was like $45 a month and you're basically getting like 10 megabits per second of download speed. So it was really hard to even watch like videos on the internet. They would buffer like crazy and it was really hard, but you at least had something. So having these devices is very helpful to be able to consume those kind of things. And kind of like along with that, kind of an honorable mention, I guess part 1A or something, I don't know, would be an external hard drive. If you're going to bring something like a laptop or maybe a Surface Pro or something that can utilize an actual external hard drive, those are great to utilize because often you have other soldiers that have a bunch of movies with them as well. So you can easily like trade back and forth, right? Someone's got all the Marvel movies, someone's got all of these, TV shows from, whatever channel or whatever, and you can go and like, hey, can you throw those on my hard drive so I have something to watch? Then that's a great way to utilize that to be able to get some, other entertainment from some of the other soldiers when you start to burn through the ones that you have. The second thing I would recommend is bringing some sort of comfortable bedding. Now, it is going to depend on what style beds you have and where you're going to as far as what to bring, but something other than maybe just the Army issued stuff. If you're really roughing it in a deployment, maybe it's a brand new deployment, you might have a cot, you might not have anything, you're just using your sleeping bag, sleep on the back of a truck, then it's a little bit rough. But if you're going to something a little bit more well-established, maybe you're gonna have like a full-size bed in a barracks room, maybe a full-size bed inside of like a little container chew or some makeshift building or a tent, or I don't know. It just really depends on the situation as far as what kind of bed you'll have. But if you have the luxury of having a decent bed, like a full-size bed or something like that, then maybe think about having some sheets sent to you or bringing some in one of like the foot lockers you have packed away or something like that, some comfortable sheets, maybe some blankets, a pillow, something like that. If you don't, then you just have to use what the Army gives you. So you have like your sleeping bag, which may be okay for some people, but sometimes you want a little bit more comfort, right? Your pillow might not be anything you have. It might be some rolled up, clothing to make a pillow out of. If you're in more of a non-combat type of deployment, you might get issued some bedding, and depending on that unit or whatever, that might just be like some basic sheets, a wool blanket, and a really basic pillow. And maybe you want something a little bit more comfortable, right? Enjoy some of the more things from home, the nicer blankets or a nicer comfortable pillow or something like that. So, definitely not something that's gonna, make or break, saving your life or anything like that, but sometimes just something nice and comfortable, so when you do get a chance to go to bed at night, you have something comfortable to lay into. I remember both deployments to Iraq, I had a fleece blanket that I had bought from one of the local bazaars, and so it made it a little bit nicer so that I wasn't just sleeping in my sleeping bag all the time. The third thing to think about maybe bringing on that deployment is a power converter. You might need a power converter to take it from 220 volts to 110 volts, depending on where you're going for that deployment. In some instances, you might already have 110 outlets or electricity run on that installation that you're going on that deployment with, but for other situations, you might not. It might be going off of what the local power grid is, the power system for that local area, which might be 210 volts, and that's probably gonna fry your laptop or anything you brought from home to bring on that deployment that requires electricity. So it's very, important to be able to have these converters. That way you can use your stuff from the United States, your stuff that powers off of 110 electricity, and it doesn't overload it by plugging it into a 210 by simply just converting the plug to their plug style isn't going to work. You're gonna need an actual piece of hardware that actually converts that 210 volts down to 110 or 220, whatever. I'm not an electrician. But I do know you need this converter, otherwise you fry your stuff. We've had before where I was on a deployment and someone didn't know this for whatever reason, right? I think it was some young private or whatever, and they went and bought a TV from the PX or got a TV they brought from home or something like that, I forget what it was, and they just simply used an adapter that plugged into the wall. Well, it shorted out that TV and jacked it up. If you don't know if that area is going to have, 110 electricity or if it's 220 at that location, a lot of times when you get there, you'll find that out and you may have to, not be able to utilize those things for the first, several days, maybe a week or whatever, until you can get one. Depending on where you're deployed at or where you're at may determine how easily or how difficult it might be to get one of those converters. But a lot of times, if you need one, those things go like crazy sometimes at that local PX or that local area. So you gotta, kind of be on top of it and make sure you get one before they sell out. And it may take a little while for them to get restocked with new power converters for other soldiers because those things go like crazy sometimes. The fourth thing I would recommend bringing on a deployment would be some kind of sentimental item, maybe a photo book, maybe some kind of item that may be from your spouse, from your parents, or something like that to just kind of keep you motivated while you're on that deployment. I definitely like to have like some physical pictures, right? I might have some pictures like my laptop of family and everything like that, but having some physical pictures to actually put up on the wall or put in an area that I could, see them, from time to time was very nice and kind of comforting. A lot of people also like to bring things like maybe a teddy bear from their daughter or from their son or something like that. Maybe they have little ones at home and they brought something like that to kind of remember them and have them next to their bed or in their bed with them or whatever. Whatever kind of thing that you can think of that maybe reminds you of home, reminds you of your loved ones, your friends, or whatever the case is. It's good to have those to be able to look back on and kind of remember what you're doing, and that there's a reason to go back home, and all sorts of kind of type of situations to just motivate you on a daily basis. The fifth and last thing I would recommend to bring on deployment is going to be a camera. That's not to say so that you can make YouTube videos or whatever, but sometimes you just want to capture those memories, right? You want to have those memories of being in Poland, maybe on even a combat deployment, right? You remembering your friends that you were in battle with or in that hostile area with, whatever the case is, to look back at those memories and see what you were doing back then, what your friends looked like, especially if you have a horrible situation where you lose one of those friends. Maybe something happens in a conflict or whatever, and at least, you have these memories to remember them from the good times. So you want to be able to capture those photos, not necessarily just always just in case this person dies, I want to have a photo of them. No, you just in general want to look back at those memories. You want to be able to, see what it was like, especially if it's like a non-combat deployment. You might have some great opportunities to do some really fun things. Maybe you're in Poland or in Korea or wherever, and you have a great opportunity to be able to see some of the local sites, and you want to capture those memories to be able to share with loved ones, family, or just look back on to reminisce on. So I definitely recommend having some kind of reliable camera. Maybe it's a GoPro or some other sort of camera. I wouldn't go probably really extreme and buy some kind of high-speed photography camera, especially if it's a combat deployment, but something that's, if something happens and it gets destroyed, you're not out thousands of dollars. So something in the couple $100 range or less or something like that would probably be a good camera to bring. For any of my viewers out there that have been on some kind of deployment, whether it was a combat or non-combat deployment, what was a key essential item that maybe helped you through that deployment? Again, I'm not talking about like, I had to have my weapon because I had to kill the bad guys kind of a thing, or I had to have this because it was required. No, I'm talking about, the more comforting things, the things that, other people may not think about, hey, maybe I should pack this when I, am putting everything together for this deployment coming up. So for those of you that have been on deployments, whether combat or non-combat deployments, leave some of those comments down below as far as some things that maybe someone may not think of that they should probably bring. If you'd like to discuss it a little bit more, you can talk about that in the comments. You can join the Discord channel and hit up that community inside of there. We got a great community of people wanting to join the Army and people that have been in the Army or currently in the Army, all that kind of stuff. Definitely hit that up. Down in the description box, you have a link to that Discord channel, my social media, website, all sorts of fun stuff. If you enjoyed the video, hit the thumbs up, maybe even think about sharing this video. I'm ChristopherChaos. Thank you so much for watching. See you next time. See ya.